Months ago, I had the opportunity to hear Oksana Nelson speak at an Operation Christmas Child meeting. Oksana is just one example of how God directs every shoebox gift into the hands of just the right child so that they will experience God's unconditional love and provision for that child. It is my pleasure to introduce Oksana Nelson. She is presently working on her MBA at Lipscomb, and God has given Oksana an amazing testimony to share with you this morning. And I know you'll be blessed. Please welcome Oksana Nelson.
Well, good morning. It is definitely a privilege to be here, and out of all Sundays, I think next to my birthday and next to my adoption day, this will be one of my favorite days. Well, I kind of have an interesting story where it has to do with adoption and with Operation Christmas Child as well. I hear that your church has been doing it for 15 years. Is that right? Yes, 15 years. That is amazing. I haven't even lived in this country for that long, so it's really, really neat. And so thank you to all of you that participate and keep it going. And so let me back up a little bit and tell you my relation with the shoebox and why I'm here, pretty much. So I was born in Russia, and when I was 7 or 8 years old, I ended up in an orphanage. Now, prior to the orphanage, I remember being passed on from one parent to the next. I started out living with my mom. She got into drugs, alcohol, prostitution, and finally abuse and neglect became so common that she was arrested because of all that, and I went to live with my dad. And I thought, oh, my dad, the man that will love me, the man that will take care of me, the man that will be there for me, was not. He unfortunately got into the same exact things that she did, and before long, he was arrested, and I went to live in an orphanage. Now, if you can picture the darkest, bleakest, grayest image in your mind, that was my orphanage. But you know what? It was so much better than spending nights on the street while my mom worked, or stealing food because my dad was never sober enough to remember to feed me. It was so much better, yet it was still an orphanage. We lived in a very small village in a very poor area of Russia. We didn't have luxuries, and when I say luxuries, I mean windows that close tightly, heaters, hot water. We didn't have any of that. Very, very poor. We shared everything. I shared a room with 3 other girls, and I really lucked out because some kids would share a room with up to 7 other kids, and the rooms weren't much bigger. It just all depended on how many bunk beds they could fit in a room. And so we shared that. We all shared our clothes. Once a week, we'd get a change of clothes. That's it, once a week. We'd walk into this great big closet, and the worker there would hand us an outfit for the week. Small, medium, large, whatever we looked like, they would just hand us that outfit. Now, we could hand wash our clothes if we wanted to, but no heaters, no hot water, and it's Russia, which means it snows like 10 months out of the year where I lived. So very, very cold. We never did that. We did get a bath once every 2 weeks. That's it, once every 2 weeks. And I know that sounds rough, but honestly, as a lazy little kid, I'm glad it wasn't any more than that. Because check it out, we had to take baths the old school hardcore way. We had to take buckets, fill them up with water, heat them up on the stove in the kitchen, and then take those buckets of water to the bathhouse, which was for some reason on the opposite end of the campus, then dump them in a tub, soap ourselves, and have someone dump that water on you. That was a bath once every 2 weeks. That's it. But you just get used to it. It's life. Yes, it wasn't uncomfortable, but we really didn't know any better. We did get food, which was good, but it was 3 very strict meals a day. If you missed a meal by a minute or 2, you could not eat. And most of the time, that was not a problem because the one thing that was always on the menu was cabbage soup. Cabbage soup, the lettuce and water. I guess they call it cabbage soup. I don't know. But they would cook it every single day because it was so inexpensive and it could feed all of us. And there were always leftovers, always. So for the next day. So that was those were our meals. At the orphanage, also, the most vivid memories were of the bathroom, and not for any good reasons at all. We all had to share one bathroom. So there were like 20 to 30 of us. It fluctuated during the year. But 20 to 30 of us, boys and girls, shared one bathroom. One toilet, one sink, one bar of soap, one tube of toothpaste, one toothbrush for all of us to share. One toothbrush. So take I don't know, take the first 6 rows and you brush your teeth, pass it on, pass it on, pass it on, and everyone would brush their teeth that way. I hated to brush my teeth more than anything else. I hated it, and I skipped out all the time, and my teeth hurt, and I didn't understand why. But you know what's really sad? Not the fact that I didn't brush my teeth. That's dental problems, that's health problems, that's all of those problems. But the sad part is that no one cared that I didn't brush my teeth. There were so many orphans there. We were just a number among so many that they could not possibly devote the time to teach us hygiene or just even care for us or even check to see if we brushed our teeth. No one cared. And that is the underlying problem. So underneath all the uncomfortable aspects of the orphanage, there is a much deeper issue, and that is the mentality of the orphan. When you get into the system, you are told that you are an orphan because you were not supposed to be born. You are an orphan because you were a mistake. You are an orphan because you became a burden to your parents, and now you're in an orphanage and you only have one future. You age out at age 16. You can no longer live in the orphanage. You can get no financial support, no moral support, nothing at age 16. Girls turn to prostitution and guys turn to drugs because it is the quickest, easiest means for them to keep their head above water. And I saw it and I accepted it, and I knew that that was what was going to happen. But deep down, there just something wasn't quite right. Something wasn't quite right. And so I loved to get away from the orphanage because it was depressing. And so I loved to get away, and I loved to go to school. School provided a place for me to read and do math and write and not have to think about what was going on every single day back at the orphanage. And I knew that even though I could never be anyone special, even though I could never be a teacher, even though I could never be a store owner, even though I knew I could never be any of those things that I thought were kind of neat that people did, at school, I at least could pretend for a split second that maybe I could be somebody. I could just pretend. That's all I could do, but it was better than not having a dream at all. Well, school posed a couple of problems. Number one, I had to walk to school. Okay, I'm not complaining about walking because we walked everywhere. That was your feet, was your transportation pretty much. So I walked everywhere, and I had to walk by myself, and usually in the dark because the way the time zone is, it's way up north, and we had very few hours of daylight. So I was used to the dark, and I was used to being by myself. I pretty much had to do that my whole life. But I was so scared to walk to school, scared to death. I just remember those being some of the scariest moments in my entire life. And again, not because I was by myself, not because it was dark, not because I was lonely, none of that, but because rape was so common that it wasn't news. It was just something that occurred every single day. Remote village, lots of orphan girls. It was the prime place for that. And no one cared. That's the thing. No one cared. And so I often ended up running to school as fast as I could. And once at school, I tried to be accepted by all the other kids. I got the good grades. I ran faster than the guys. I did all of that, but it didn't matter how good I tried. I was still an orphan. All that the kids saw was a kid in an orphan's uniform, a kid with an orphan's backpack, and a kid who got a free lunch because she was an orphan and had to eat by herself. We were separated. We were like these outcasts of society. We were like these diseases that no one wanted to be around. And after school, when other kids would go home to their families or play with their friends, I would just end up going back to the orphanage, running back to the orphanage. And every single day was the same. We woke up, we ate, we did our chores, we went to school, we did our chores, and we went to bed. Every single day. But one day, everything I knew about life, everything I knew about people, about living, about existence, everything was turned completely upside down. This day was so incredible. We had some missionaries come to my orphanage. Now, I told you that no one in my own community wanted anything to do with us. Yet these missionaries flew all the way from the United States to Russia, drove 4 hours into this little village just to spend time with us. They came, they played games with us, they taught us songs, they taught us about Jesus. I had never heard of Jesus. I knew that God was up there, but I've never heard of Jesus. And this one man, he was performing a skit, and he stood on a platform while we all sat down in front of him. And he was telling us the simplest, purest truth. He was telling us that God loved us so much that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins. That if we believe in him, we will have that everlasting life and that love and that hope that we all long for. And then he said, even though your earthly fathers have failed you, you now have a heavenly Father who will never, ever fail you. And I remember staring at that man for what seemed like hours. I was so mesmerized by what he had to say. And I kept thinking, I don't know who you're talking about, but one day I am going to find out. And the missionaries, they after our games and our skits, and it was a scheduled day, we had some free time. And during this free time, something so simple yet so beautiful happened. It was one of the most beautiful things anyone had ever done for me. There was a lady, she was one of the missionaries. She sat down in a chair, and she motioned for me to come to her. I didn't know what she wanted because I didn't speak any English. She didn't speak any Russian, but I came. I came to her, and this lady picked me up, put me in her lap, and she rocked me back and forth. I was 9 years old, and up to this point, I had never been hugged before. I had never been told that I was loved before. I had never been kissed before. I had never been given affection of any kind that little children should receive. I had never been given any of that. I didn't even know what she wanted, but all that she did was embrace me. She hugged me, embraced me, and she just rocked me. That was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever done for me, and I could not possibly imagine how or what else the missionaries could do. But you know what's neat? Not only did I get to hear about Jesus, but that lady showed me Jesus. She showed me the kind of love that man was talking about when he was performing the skit. And so not only did I get to see all of that, but I also got Jesus in the most amazing, the coolest, the funnest, I know that's not a word, way that I could have ever received Jesus. And that was through one of those Operation Christmas Child shoeboxes. That was my first Christmas gift. I had never, ever been given a gift before, ever. In fact, we didn't celebrate birthdays. Whenever we were admitted into the system, we were just told how old we were. That's it. So we didn't have celebrations of any kind. And all of a sudden, I get this amazing gift, and they said it's for me. First off, I could not understand why someone would pack something for an orphan. I'm an orphan. Did they know, whoever sent this gift, that I was no one, that I was at the bottom of society, and I was not supposed to receive anything this beautiful? It didn't matter because that gift was for me, and they said for me to open it. Well, I opened it up, and I was overwhelmed at everything in there. There were dominoes in my box. I was so excited to finally have something to go and share with my friends, because the games that we played were always like hide and seek and tag, those self-sufficient games. I don't know what you call those. But that was my first board game ever to go and share with my friends. I had socks in that box. Socks, brand new socks that had tags and everything. So I knew that no one else had ever worn them before. And I didn't have to go into that closet and ask for them. I had candy in that box, a sweet treat from that cabbage soup that we always ate. And guess what? 2 items were the most important items in that box, and I was so excited to finally go do this in the bathroom. Toothbrush. I finally had my own toothbrush and my own tube of toothpaste. I was so excited. I thought I was on top of the world. I had my own toothbrush, which was in a package, so I knew that no one else had ever used it before. I've never seen things in packages. It was so weird. But the toothpaste, I tell you what, it was magical, because I took the cap off and I squeezed it, and 3 colors came out. I could not understand how you can possibly stuff 3 colors inside a tube of toothpaste, let alone squeeze it and have it come out perfectly evenly. I didn't get it, but it was so fun to go through that box, item by item, and just be a kid. Just laugh for a split second. Just have a moment of joy, a moment of peace. The very first item I took out of that box was actually a picture of the kids that sent it. And there could have been one pencil in that box, or there could have been iPhone 5, iPad mini, you put all those whatever in that box, it would not have mattered because there was a picture in that box. And this picture, you see, I wanted a family. I really, really wanted a family more than anything else. And I knew that that was almost impossible. I was getting too old. Adoptions rarely occurred in my part of the country. And this picture was the closest that I could possibly get to a family. I didn't know who the kids were. I didn't know why they chose to send me a gift. But you know what? I'm so glad that they did. Because not only did they share that amazing gift with me, they shared their love with me. And most importantly, they shared Christ's love with me. And so the missionaries, unfortunately, it was time for them to go. And instead of leaving us sad and just depressed that they had to go, instead they left us with so much hope. And they taught us the most important lesson I had ever learned in my entire life. They taught us how to pray. Now, I didn't know that prayer was just simple communication to God. I didn't know that. I mean, we pray all the time, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, 5. I'm sure we don't even think about it sometimes. But prayer is so simple, yet I did not know that. So the missionaries, they just taught us how to do that. And they said that now you can ask for the desires of your heart. You can ask God for those things that you want. Now, I really didn't want anything else. I got that amazing gift. I could not possibly imagine wanting or needing anything else. But I did ask for one big thing, and that was a family. I know it's a little bit of a big thing to ask for, but it was the only thing I ever wanted. I wanted a family. I wanted to see what it was like to be part of a functional family, a stable family, a loving family. I wanted that, but I was too old. I was 10 years old. Like I said, too old. I already hit the double digits. I mean, that was out of the question pretty much. So I asked God for a backup prayer. And I asked him to help me make enough money to buy a one-way ticket to the United States because I wanted to live where the kindest, most loving, most compassionate people I ever met were from. I wanted to be here because of those missionaries. But you know what's neat? God goes above and beyond anything we can imagine, anything we can plan, anything we can dream. He goes above all that. Because I was sitting in class one day, and this man came to me and he said, "Hey, it's your last," he was one of the workers at the orphanage. I really didn't know who he was, but I knew he worked there. And he said, "It's your last day here. Say goodbye to all your friends. Your family is here." My family was there. That was not supposed to happen. It was against all realm of possibilities that my family could possibly be there. But he took me back to the orphanage, and I walked into my director's office, and there was this couple. And a while back, this couple saw a picture of a 10-year-old orphan girl. They had just finished 2 international adoptions, and they were not looking to adopt. They had their family. They had their 2 kids. They had their 2 dogs. They had their 2 cars. They had a 2-story house. Life was set. They lived in Southern California. They were saving for a boat. Everything was perfect. But then there was this picture, and they could not let it out of their sight. It was just constantly just something about the picture that they could not put their finger on. And instead of coming up with a bunch of excuses as to why not, as no money, she's too old, she's older than our kids, we're done, they simply came to God and asked him, "What is it?" And he gave them one clear answer: "You are to be her parents." And they followed through. They didn't know what they were doing. They were crazy. Everyone thought they were crazy, but they followed through. Anonymous checks started to come through the mail. Just all the paperwork was going by so quickly. The government, all the doors were just opening. In just 3 short months, everything was complete. And then they came to their kids, and they presented this idea to them about an older sister. That's a tough one. How do you present that to your kids? And their daughter, Lucienne, at the time said, "Mom and Dad, I had been praying for an older sister. It's about time she gets here." And so just walking into the director's office and seeing my mom and my dad for the first time was incredible. And we've never met before. We've never met, but legally, I was their daughter. I don't know how that works. I don't know how it happened, but legally, I was their daughter, and I loved them as soon as I saw them. Again, it was just really neat. I walked in there, and I felt this immediate connection that they were my mom and my dad, and I loved them from that point on. I've never loved before. Everyone was so awful, I thought, growing up. And all of a sudden, I loved these two people. I don't know how that happened. It was a miracle, that's for sure. And I remember my mom was crying and just tears running down her face. And I kept thinking, am I not what you thought I was? Am I not what you hoped for? But then I thought, it's a good thing I'm your daughter because you can't get rid of me now. And so not only did God give me the family, but he also gave me that one-way ticket. It was a silly prayer, but God answered it. And I remember flying back and sitting in between my parents on this great big airplane. It was my first airplane. It was my first, by the way, when my mom and dad came to pick me up, that was my first car ride. I had never been in a car before. Everything was by foot, if you were lucky, by train, and sometimes if you were really lucky, by bus. And so that was my first car ride, my first plane ride, and I was sitting between my dad was on my right, he was watching something, and my mom was on my left, she was reading a book. And the sun just shined through the cab across our laps, and it was the most peaceful moment in my entire life. After 10 years of struggling, after 10 years of fighting, after 10 years of stealing, after 10 years of being cold, of being hungry, after 10 years of being used in ways that little girls, little children, no one should ever be used for, after 10 years of all that, I could finally take a deep breath and let it all go. Because now I was sitting between two people that cared for me, two people that loved me, with an incredible future ahead. And it's neat. I grew up in Southern California, I guess my second childhood, and when I was 16, we moved to Texas. And in Texas, I heard about Operation Christmas Child for the first time. And I started putting pieces together and realized that that is the gift that started it all, which is really neat. That is the gift that planted that seed of hope, that gave me that example of love and taught me about Jesus. That was the gift. And so ever since then, of course, I have just been sharing this story, and it's snowballed into me going everywhere and being here, on this day. So it's really, really been an amazing journey. And looking back, it's God's story. It is God's story, and it is how God chooses to use us. And we all have stories, and he all has enabled us and given us those skills and abilities to serve him in so many ways. Your service can be encouraging someone. Your service can be helping someone out. Your service could be packing one box, packing 10 boxes, adopting a child, fostering a child, going on a mission trip, whatever it is. God has called you, and he has given you that ability. And that is our destiny. That is our purpose. That is why we're here. That is why we were created. And we do this, and we serve, and we just give of ourselves, and we are the hands and feet of Jesus Christ to unknown destinations, because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, we want to hear the sweet words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Thank you so much.